Hey everybody, this is Rory Francis, and you're watching another segment of Igniting American Manufacturing, where we talk about all things about American manufacturing, from workforce development, reshoring, innovation, and things of that nature. Today I'm going to welcome Jacob Andrews with IVue. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey,
And
good morning,
Jacob and
Rory.
you're so welcome. I'm really glad to have you and have this conversation again. Jacob and I had an opportunity to talk at length and share up at the Robotics Drone League National Championships in Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. So I'm really glad to have you back and talk a little more in depth and granular. We kind of just touched on things at a high level. So I'm going to start with IVue Media, IVue Robotics, World's IVue. So tell us a little bit about IVue's mission, and I just listed three of the things you do, and I know you do a little bit more than that. Tell us a little bit about IVue and your mission and what you're all about.
Yeah, so I originally started IVue with the idea to map the world with drones, and that's since evolved over time into really just making the world more accessible. And I was really interested in manned aviation. Started taking my first flight lessons when I was 11 years old. And I always knew I wanted to do something in aviation, but it wasn't until I got into college, found a drone program, started to realize that drones weren't just the future of the world of like air travel, but they were just the future of the world. And I guess tangibly speaking, what we look as like a long-term goal for IVue is everyone comes to own and use a drone in the same way that we own and use cars or computers today. So again, if you fast forward, let's say 20 years, we're in the year 2045, I think the term drone operator will by and large be a term of the past. In the same way here in 2025, we don't call people that drive around in cars or use computers computer operators, right? It's just part of the daily condition or of being human. So we could talk a little bit more about what that looks tangibly. But as far as what we're doing in the here and now, IVue Media is our division of IVue, where we essentially connect freelance content creators, as we call them, photographers, videographers, and those could also include drone pilots. Not every media job that we send out these content creators to requires some aerial like drone media, but we look to provide value to the drone operators of today, not just make more drone operators capable of doing more tomorrow. So, you know, most of where people make money using a drone today is in the media production space. So that's how we got started. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just did, I think.
No worries.
So Jake Andrews is in college and he's learning about drones, and he has what happened? Do you have why aren't you just working for some corporation? What was the impetus that I'm going to do this on my own? I'm always curious, what sparks that entrepreneur in folks. What was the impetus? Why go on your own? Why not just become part of a team? Tell me a little bit about Jake Andrews and what motivated you to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give my professor a lot of credit here. So I attended Middle Tennessee State University. Shout out to Dr. Kevin Corns, phenomenal guy. In my first week of the Intro to Unmanned Aircraft Systems class, he had talked about wanting every student to be involved in a drone business or create their own business by the end of their 4 years. And I've always kind of been somewhat entrepreneurial, the cliche lemonade stands, snow cone stands growing up. I always worked jobs, at least every summer since I was literally 4 or 5 years old. So, I just got a lot of that work experience early on and knew, you got to work some way, somehow, as you grow older. And so I figured, why not do something I'm really interested in? I've definitely seen what a life can look like when you're making good money, but you're not really interested in the work that you're doing, and wanted to avoid that. But really going back to college, a professor, he wanted us to be involved in our own business or, start our own business by the end of our 4 years. That got me to start thinking, I don't need to wait the whole 4 years to start my own business. There was a business plan competition that they were running at the school that I started competing in, and after we got a $500 award from one of the judges, that was kind of the icing on the cake, so to speak, that, you know what, let me leave school and go start building IVue full time. And there's more to it than that, but at a very high level, I think that gives you a little bit better of idea of what was going on in my head at the time.
That's great, and I love that. I love that little $500 stipend they got you started. I love that. I've never heard of that program at the university. That's just that's really amazing. Sounds like you have had a really good professor inspired you. I love stories like that. That's awesome. Well, you kind of answered my next question. I always wonder, in the 80s and 90s, as Silicon Valley continued to explode, a lot of folks built software and things along those lines, totally with the premise to sell it off, get it to a certain point and sell it off. And then there's those, and they're few and far in between. They actually built a company to last because they had a passion for it. I think you just told us, shared with us, you fall into the latter, but just, expand on that a little bit. I mean, is this a passion project? This is where IVue is your baby, or is this something that, you're building to move on to? I mean, is this a stepping stone, or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is definitely, building IVue is definitely a labor of love. I like to look at it in the sense that, you laid it out. You either typically have a mercenary or a missionary, someone that's doing something for the riches or someone that's doing something for the mission, right? And I definitely see myself more as a missionary than a mercenary. Now, of course, as building a company, I like to say I didn't start IVue as a not-for-profit or a nonprofit. So, I mean, I do see an opportunity for a longer-term outcome, like a financial outcome of IVue, but really just selling a portion of it off in the public markets, ideally going the IPO route. So obviously, I do want to take care of everyone involved in building IVue, but no, I never see myself or really our team wanting to sell it off to like a private equity company or any other exit like that.
Okay. That obvious comment. A lot of things are might be obvious to you. They're not. A lot of people don't have that, and that goes to teamwork. I want to get into that for a second, but I want to point out majority of businesses in this country, including manufacturing, are small businesses under 100 people, and there's another portion that are actually under 20 people. And I've actually interviewed some of those folks, and had them in here. And one of the common, and here's something that was kind of neat to follow. Sorry, a little ageism here. Before you were born, we started offshoring and moving companies out. And as I've been on this journey with this show, I've got to interview companies, and I interviewed the companies that stayed in this country. Had one, as far as I know, one common denominator. They tended to be smaller and family-owned and had a commitment to the community. And you actually said that what is obvious to you isn't necessarily obvious to a lot of business owners. Tell me a little bit about doing the right thing by your employees in the community and how you built your team, because I've actually met your team. Tell me a little bit about that. And I was very impressed by it, by the way. So tell me a little bit about your corporate culture as far as community and team building.
Yeah, so I mean, to the points that you just made, a lot of it goes hand in hand where we do get involved a lot in the local schools and really beyond the local schools. As you know, we met up at the RDL championship event, which is not local to either of us. But we did have, just the fortune of getting connected with so many great people like Dennis and, again, on the more local side, getting connected with the local schools, high schools, middle schools, doing their STEM outreach initiatives. And a lot of that is how we also build the team, right? We show a lot of the students, what's possible with drones to some degree, at least inspire them to think about drones more as multi-use platforms, not just flying cameras or toys. Get them inspired to help us make drones easier to use and more versatile, whether it's actually helping us from the design perspective of upgrading our drones. One of the attachments that we have, this is a spotlight attachment for our drones, and that was a payload designed by a high school student that works with us. And so it's really, as much as I'm going out there to really kind of evangelize the world of drones that we're building, a lot of that is also to help us build our team, because we can't do this all alone. I know you met some of our team up at RDL, but there's a lot more people behind the scenes that, go into the research and development, the production of our drones, the software development, including website design. And yeah, all of that just comes from really me getting myself out there and, evangelizing. But obviously that's a very small element of what it takes to, actually build a drone company in the way we are, right? You just can't talk about it. The drones don't build themselves, as I like to say.
Okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit. I want to talk about your outreach in the community here. Before we do that, I want to hold that off on that little bit. You just held up one of your products, and not only do you fly drones and take video and work on applications, you physically are building these here in the United States. Tell us a little bit actually about your product, and I've seen it, but you know what, I want to clarify for the benefit of folks that know, RDL stands for Robotics Drone League, and we actually met at their national championship in Johnson City, Kentucky, and you mentioned Dennis, and that's Dennis Courtney, the founder, who has a passion, a true passion for empowering and educating our youth about robotics and automation. He's a gentleman, so that was a great opportunity. That's where we met, and I actually got to see these. But for the benefit of our audience here, show us what you have here.
Yeah, so we have two of our models, two of our 4 Develop Air models. So this one, the smaller one, is called the Develop Air Mini, and right now we have a spotlight attachment, or what we call a mod kit, attached to it. And so a mod kit is like a more developer friendly version of a module that we're making for drones to be kind of like USB on computers. But this is our larger Develop Air model. So this is going to be better for carrying larger payloads up to about 3 pounds. Both of them get approximately 25 to 30 minute flight time without any payload. And really what differentiates these Develop Air models versus a standard drone that you can get off the shelf is the customizability. So where you typically get a drone off the shelf, it's a flying camera, it takes photos and videos. And of course you can attach nice high quality camera systems to both of these drones, but you can also attach spotlights, parachute deployment mechanisms, actual deployment mechanisms to drop objects like golf balls or other objects, from the bottom of the drone. We've attached sprayers to them, so you can actually spray crops, spray pesticides. Hypothetically speaking, we may have even built and attached a flamethrower to one of these Develop Airs. And again, it's really just about getting students predominantly that want to become engineers and developers to think about all the different possible use cases of drones. A lot of those use cases, again, are possible right now. They're just too technically complex for the average day, farmer roofer, or, as we are really working towards the everyday, head of household that, could even benefit from using a drone for their own household deliveries. But again, just the technology by and large is not easy enough for those, everyday people to use. And you really kind of have to be technically savvy. And so that's why, we work with organizations like the Robot Drone League, just to get more students familiar with not just how to operate a drone, but how to build them, repair them, and upgrade them. Sort of those producer, developer, technician sort of skill sets.
At that event we talked about nationals, there was a gentleman. He's retired colonel. He's now the assistant director for ROTC nationally, and I know ROTC and the Department of Defense, DoD, are getting very involved in STEM because there's a lot of civilian applications. There's also military applications, and as we develop these drones, we need to engage our youth and educate them on their civilian use and their military use, so that they were up there involved in it. I want to go back to, we kind of alluded to a little bit, we talked a little bit about your team building, and I was, really impressed with them. But as far as your outreach, there's at least 4 things I want to touch on. Club Science Kids, tell us a little about that. And Tell me, that's a Atlanta-based group, but tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you might appreciate even just the power of social media, and a lot of people, maybe less so now, but over the last few years, have liked to kind of dogpile on Facebook. And Facebook has been a great platform for us, like from the media business perspective, finding drone pilots or other content creators we can work with. But I actually ended up coming across this organization, Clubside Kids, through a Georgia drone pilot Facebook group, which I would also like to touch on. He was looking for some STEM drones for upcoming summer camps that their organization, again, Clubside Kids, at least the chapter here in Atlanta, were hosting. And so I responded back, and this was shortly after bringing Develop Air to market. We have the perfect drone for a camp like this. Went over and met the at the time Atlanta chapter like franchise owner. Met with him, did a little bit of a demonstration, and then he went ahead and bought 3 of our Develop Air drones to use in this Tech Genius camp, which we also used one of our team members to help their like counselor, the head of like the camp for these sessions. There's like 7 or 8 weeks of camps that we kind of co-hosted with them, and we basically just had a complete soup to nuts sort of camp, so to speak, where we had students learning how to build Develop Air, learning how to fly Develop Air, learning how to do some CAD design, and then some of that was also mixed in with virtual reality, and so just trying to get these kids interested in all these new like cutting edge fields that they're going to grow up living in the same way that we've grown up building our careers around, again, cars and computers. They're going to be growing up around drones and VR, by and large. So that was just a great opportunity for us to get more Develop Air in the hands of some students, and then again work with them to see what works, what doesn't, and then take that information to further refine our Develop Air as we've done over the last couple of years.
Well, I love those grassroots efforts and organizations like that. We have a frequent guest, and he actually is co-host a little bit. Terry Iverson runs a camp, and he has a foundation Champions now, and he actually brings mini manufacturing systems and has goes out and has students go through his camp and learn about manufacturing and the benefits of it. So this seems to be along those lines. I love programs like this,
really quick, one other quick aside that's coming to mind. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th week of one of those Tech Genius camps. It really impressed me. One of the students was 10 years old, and he was understanding like the drone control software that our drones use. For any more technical people out there that have heard of like the Linux operating system for computers, the Linux Foundation, the nonprofit organization that makes that software that developers use on computers, they also make a drone control program. And this student, downloaded the program on his computer that he brought into the tech camp, and then the next day he came back and he had already created like pre-programmed like flight missions for our drone. So when we showed up again that next day, we were able to take his laptop, plug in the little radio to his computer, and send the commands to our drone. And again, this was something that a 10-year-old kid was able to do, where we have worked with much more technical adults that still aren't familiar with or able to climb that learning curve as quickly. So that was a real a win for me, beyond obviously the opportunity to work with Clubside Kids, just that hands-on sort of feedback from a student that really took the ball and ran with it, so to speak.
Well, at ATG, Advanced Technology Group, we're involved in drones, and we use some photogrammetry drones and spend a lot of time training people up. Sounds like I might have a future employee there or someone who can help us with our training. That's great. I love stories like that, and I appreciate you working with them. Tell me a little bit about Kennesaw State and Breadboard Air, and help me pronounce this, Dr. Billy Kihai. Kihai, okay. Yeah, tell me about Breadboard Air.
So Breadboard Air was what became Develop Air. And so again, this is the standard Develop Air model here, at least the newer version of it. there have been quite a few changes, mostly internally to Develop Air since that first one went to Dr. Kihai. But that was right as like COVID was around late 2021, or really mid 2021. We had just really kind of finished up all the research and development for our first version of Develop Air. At the time, it was called Breadboard Air, and we actually had a breadboard. If anyone's familiar with electronics, we had a breadboard physically in like the fuselage or the body of Develop Air. Realized that wasn't too practical, just with how limited the space was on the inside. So we started to think about more of what we could do from an exterior perspective to allow you to modify our drones, and actually have a breadboard that I can show as an example for anyone that's not as familiar. So there's a bunch of little pinholes that you can plug in wires and other components to. And it's a great way to be able to do prototyping without actually having to solder anything in place, using like a more permanent connection. So Dr. Kihai is a computer engineering professor at a local university here called Kennesaw State University, where actually our lead software developer goes to school. But in any case, he has been working on vehicle-to-vehicle communication research, or like IoT is the more common like buzzword used. And he wanted to be able to communicate with cars, drones, and boats all within one network. And then using Develop Air, where there's a rail underneath our drone to be able to quickly attach or detach your payload and have it, secured into place. He already had like a Raspberry Pi type of mini computer that he had developed called the Owl Box. And this was essentially operating as like a Wi-Fi router. So he could actually establish a local network from the drone that then nearby within a few miles, his RC cars and RC boats could access. So he had us do a demo showing that our drone could actually fly with his payload. And then he said he would have his sponsor at T-Mobile actually reach out to buy our drone. Again, was Breadboard Air at the time when we were demoing it to him. And then we changed the name actually while we were working on the delivery, worked with him, just to make sure that he was all right with that. But it was kind of funny where we had bootstrapped, before then as a media business, IVue Media. And so we had, plenty of experience making invoices, sending out quotes, and, working with customers. But it was just funny. The day that we were doing a demo out near him, the next day, I got a call from a new number coming from T-Mobile asking right then and there if they could make the purchase for our drone. So, I'm having to get into QuickBooks and, make a quote or an invoice for Develop Air. And again, at that time, I still think it was named Breadboard Air at the time of quoting it out. But next day we got the purchase from T-Mobile, and about 6 weeks later, we delivered our very first Develop Air. And recently we've just delivered Develop Air number 32. So still small numbers, but we should be reaching number 100 by the end of this year, or at least that's the goal.
Well, Jacob, I just want to summarize here, and I have two questions for you. So you manufacture drones, you provide drone service and video services. You're involved in the schools with the Tech Genius Camp, Club Science Kids. You're working with Kennesaw University, iterating your product. You mentioned Georgia Drone Pilots group as well, and the club. And you're out at the Robotics Drone League championships and showing that younger generation what a young man like yourself and a fairly new company is doing in the industry and enlightening young people. Sounds like you have a lot of fun. True?
Yeah, absolutely. There's never a boring day in the drone business, especially, we'll get even outside of our typical business some pretty interesting requests for like custom drone modification jobs that, let's just say, don't always seem to be above board. So we've even had times where we have a local high school engineering teacher coming into our office to do what's called an externship, to see, what sort of experience the students are working with us are getting, how they could better, adjust the curriculum with inside the school to better meet the needs of, businesses in the local area. And last year, after I got home from a drone conference out in San Diego, that same day, got back, had an engineering teacher from one of the local schools meeting with us. And then we had like 7, 8 FBI agents also coming into our office as we got reached out to by someone that looked like they had a drone that, while we couldn't prove it, looked like they're going to be doing contraband deliveries into local jails and prisons. And of course, we want to be on the right side of history, working with the right people to, prevent those sort of, bad acts from happening. But I think another kind of point to touch on that a lot of people, hear about drones and have concerns over the privacy. And while I'm not saying there's no concern to be had there, I think the more real concern is, using drones, even of the size of like a Developer or Developer Mini, capable of carrying a payload that, can be dropped. And of course, that's not anything that we want to see intentionally happen, but that I think is the more real concern to touch on, more so than privacy. And again, that's something that we've seen firsthand, as you say. Very fun, never a dull moment in the drone business, working in cases like that of how to stop contraband deliveries and, working with law enforcement to make sure that people are operating their drones in the correct way.
Well, Jacob, I'm going to wrap up here. I want to tell you, I think IVue is an impressive venture, and you're on the right path. And I love to see that you're actually working in the community and giving back and working with government and academia and just helping people. That's impressive too, but impressive product. I'm going to pull back the covers because you actually have one other product you don't talk about. You're actually in a virtual studio right now, correct? And that's actually something else you do as well, and it looks pretty good. It looks really good. I'm sorry for pulling back the covers, but that's kind of cool. So this is Rory Francis, Jacob Andrews with IVue. Thanks for watching.